Okay, if you haven't watched the Resurrecting Atlantis film, that BBC film, looking at the ideas of Graham Hancock and others, please take a look at it before you watch this video. It will make a lot more sense. The video does a very good job of showing those fraudulent ideas, looking at the specifics of them, and then step by step tearing each element and each piece of evidence apart. Right? They do this with not only the pyramids, the date of the Sphinx, but also, as you saw, the temples at Angkor Wat, and the idea that Graham Hancock floated that the temples actually correlate with the constellation Draco, which doesn't make a lot of sense when you actually look at the evidence. And it's a lot like one of the articles I posted about the Beaver Sunstone. Please take a look at that article, not too long, but it's about a supposed site that was found on Beaver Island in Lake Michigan, where they said that they found the alignment of stones in a circle that was some sort of Native American calendar. They selected stones out of a whole field of stones. When you actually look at all the stones that are in that field, there's no correlation. They selectively chose stones that fit into kind of a circular pattern and said, look, these were deliberately laid out. And there's no evidence that that is actually the case. Okay, so Robert Bauval in 1989 really started this whole idea that ancient people built monuments to kind of correlate with constellations. One of the ones they love to use, what the constellation they love to use many, many times, is Orion, because Orion's belt is 3 stars. And if you can find 2 things in a line with a third thing slightly offset on that line, you've got a correlation. And so you can find this kind of correlation in many, many things, and many, many monuments, because you're really just looking at 2 points and one other point. And so you can find something to correlate with this. So a lot of pseudo-archaeologists love to use Orion. What they're doing is they're starting with incorrect assumptions and then using that to make even more incorrect assumptions. So you saw that Graham Hancock and Bauval are saying that the pyramids in Giza were built specifically to mimic the alignment of Orion's belt. There's no evidence for that. And in fact, the evidence for where the pyramids were built, their specific location, has everything to do with the geology of the area in which they were built. Right? But that aside, then they assume, okay, well, actually, if you go back to 2600 BC, the alignment is not so good. The alignment actually is much better around 10,000 BC, proving that the pyramids are a lot older than archaeologists believe. They date back to thousands of years before Egyptian civilization, at a time when the archaeological evidence says that people were hunters and gatherers, and that there's no archaeological evidence for any kind of large civilization at that time that could have built the pyramids. Right? So they say, okay, well, the alignment is best at 10,000 BC, so the pyramids must date to 10,000 BC. And then Graham Hancock uses this to say there was some sort of proto-civilization kind of near the end of the Ice Age that sank because of the Ice Age, and sort of the mother civilization of all other civilizations. And so you kind of, there's no evidence to support it, and they start off with a bad assumption and then use that assumption to make another incorrect assumption. So I think the show did a good job of showing you all the problems with these theories. These theories kind of wax and wane. So they were popular, especially after Stargate. They waned a little bit, but now they've become more popular again. Because of that episode, and the BBC did a very good job with it. Hancock and Bauval didn't like the way they were portrayed in it. They were treated pretty fairly because they had a chance to make their argument, and then the skeptics made their argument. So they actually tried to complain to the Broadcasting Standards Commission in England. And there was a hearing. They heard both sides, and the commission stated that the program makers acted in good faith in their examination of the theories of Mr. Hancock and Mr. Boval. Just because they didn't side with them, Hancock and Boval say they are treated unfairly. And the fact that archaeologists are not rushing over to embrace these ideas which have no evidence, Hancock again uses as proof to show that he is sort of unfairly maligned by these academics who are close-minded and not open to alternative ideas. The Orion correlation theory also doesn't make a lot of sense if you're trying to think of, are people in Egypt actually trying to mimic the pattern of the stars in the sky, or are they actually taking that pattern and then superimposing it, sliding it down on the ground? Because this is the only way that the pyramids actually line up, is if you're looking at Orion and then you're kind of mirror imaging it sort of or sliding this down to the earth. But if you were actually trying to mimic the pattern in the sky, then the pattern would be reversed, right? So it doesn't actually make a lot of sense. And in some ways you could say that the alignment is incorrect when looking at the alignment of the stars in the sky, right? Okay, I put an article also about the date of the Sphinx, right? That was another pseudo-archaeological question that was also examined in the film, right? That is, again, people were trying to support this sort of Egypt is older than people think idea, and they were saying that there's erosion on the bottom of the Sphinx that looks like water erosion, and you couldn't have had that kind of water erosion when it was built because it was so dry. So the Sphinx must date to the Ice Age, or near the Ice Age, when it was a lot wetter, sort of the beginning of the Holocene. And because of the rains at that time, you would have had that erosion. That's just completely incorrect based on the geology. And as I point out in the article as well, there are places where these geologists are pointing to, places on the Sphinx that were clearly built in 2600 BC because they have writing on them, that have water erosion on them. So yeah, there is rain in Egypt, enough that you would have some erosion, but also they didn't take into account the weathering of the different geologic layers. Right, so that's another sort of pseudo-archaeological idea that fits into this. Okay, well, we're going to have one more presentation on psychic archaeology that will be coming soon, and then I will also post my own fraudulent presentation to give you an idea of the kind of thing that you could do for your fraudulent presentation. So that will be posted soon. So I hope you're having a good beginning to your week, and hope you're not too inundated with work. Let me know if I can be of any help, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.